Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, your primetime destination. News, newsmakers, talking points this Tuesday night. We have plenty packed for you on the show tonight. Restaurateurs across India are winding down operations or scaling them down because of an LPG shortage. The government says all is well. We'll do a reality check. All gas or genuine concern? Will India's strategic silence on the Iran war in the early days pay dividends or not? Among my guests today is the former Foreign Secretary Shiv Shankar Menon. In a no-holds-barred interview, he has questions to raise over India's foreign policy. And 10 days after a missile strike killed over 160 schoolgirls in Iran, our OSINT team will tell you exactly what happened, who is responsible for the killing of innocent girls, and who decides Iran war's endgame. One of the world's leading analysts, Trita Parsi, will be among my special guests tonight. So we've packed plenty on the show as always. But the story we are breaking is one that should concern each and every one of us, the LPG shortage. Let's get you the very latest of what the government is saying. The government is saying that despite the West Asia war disruption, global oil supply chains are now being restored. Sources saying government is procuring energy from 40 countries and has expanded its horizon to purchase to meet energy needs of the country. Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri claiming that India is in touch with prospective countries to further the government's bid to fulfill energy needs of the country as soon as possible. Government's insisting no need to panic and is meeting the oil and energy needs, and says the interests of people will be served by importing oil from more countries. So that's a background briefing that Hardeep Puri has given. Piyush Mishra is our reporter on the spot. Piyush, 48 hours ago, the government was saying all is well, we have enough energy stocks to last 40 days. Suddenly, reality seems to have hit the government. Now the government seems to be saying that they will procure, if necessary, energy sources from different countries. What has suddenly changed? Is the government in control, or have they been taken by surprise by the LPG shortage in several parts of the country?
Well, Rajdeep, we have seen as to how in the last few hours the government has changed its strategy. Yesterday, the Minister of Petroleum had also issued advisory to all oil refineries companies to produce more and more LPG to ensure that the domestic needs are fulfilled. And the sources are now confirming that in the last 24 hours, the production has also increased. It has jumped to 10% extra. So the government is now taking all precautionary measures to ensure that no supply chain is hit. At the same time, what we are also given to understand from our sources that since the entire situation escalated in the Middle East, in mid of January, the government had started talking to various other countries. Earlier, we used to import oil and energy sources from 27 countries, but after that situation, looking at the evolving situation, now the government have confirmed that it is in talks with around 40 countries to ensure that there is continuous supply of energy sources. Hardeep Puri has also said that the government will ensure that all domestic needs are met every day, and for that the government is putting all the effort.
Okay. Piyush Mishra there joining us with the very latest. Now that's what the government is saying, that the energy needs will be met. But look at it. Just 48 hours ago, government sources were saying, don't worry, we are in control. 48 hours later, there is a reality check. Because from Bengaluru to Kolkata via Mumbai, India's restaurants in particular, hotels in particular, and even some individuals are claiming that they are facing a shortage of LPG cylinders. It's worse with commercial LPG cylinders. This is a ripple effect of the ongoing conflict in West Asia, which has tightened global gas supplies. The government saying the situation will stabilize soon. Businesses, though, are saying that the squeeze is already being felt. Will this crisis now transcend from restaurants and commercial establishments to your homes? That's the big question. Let's take a look at this reality check.
A war thousands of kilometers away is now hitting Indian kitchens.
We are at a Nisarga Grand Restaurant, which supplies food the entire day, whether it is a breakfast or lunch, where people come in large number here to have. They had a stock of 6 cylinders they can use for the next day, that is today. And whatever the cylinder they had in stock, which has already been used, and it will be used for the entire day, and they don't have stock for tomorrow.
In Bangalore, there is only about 20% of supply that has happened in Bangalore yesterday for smaller hoteliers. So as of now, I have only cylinders for today.
We are reporting from Hotel Ananda, one of the busiest vegetarian restaurants in the city. It's not just fear-mongering, the struggle is real. In fact, per day, the hotel utilizes about 10 LPG cylinders, but today they are fully running out of it. In fact, for lunch, every day they used to provide variety rice, but today they've cut down on the variety rice owing to the short supply of LPG cylinders.
सर हम लोग का कमर्शियल गैस का बिजनेस है। अभी स्थिति बहुत प्रॉब्लम में है अभी, क्योंकि डेली हम लोग का सप्लाई था 650 सिलेंडर्स का डेली सप्लाई था, बट अभी हम लोग के पास फिलहाल एक भी सिलेंडर्स नहीं है। बहुत कस्टमर्स के फोन आ रहे, कंटिन्यूस फोन आ रहे, बट हम लोग किसी को कुछ सिलेंडर सप्लाई नहीं कर पा रहे।
ये बड़ी दुख की बात है कि ये सब 7 दिन से चल रहा है। गवर्नमेंट को पता है, हमारे आमदार खासदार कॉर्पोरेटर को पता है कि ये होने वाला है, मगर कोई भी गवर्नमेंट या हमारे आमदार खासदार कॉर्पोरेटर ने इसके बारे में कोई हमको चेतावनी नहीं दी है, कि हमको हमारे प्लानिंग नहीं किया या हमसे संपर्क करने की भी कोशिश नहीं की है।
Right now you can see all the raw materials are ready, but the shortage in LPG gas cylinders have led to the hotel halt its functions, and cooking and preparation are still to be done, as the LPG cylinder is now awaited after the shortage that is being going on in the city of Hyderabad.
ये गैस का अरेंजमेंट करने के लिए मैं 2 दिन से घर को नहीं गया। 4 से 5 सिलेंडर लगते, अब मुश्किल से 2 सिलेंडर मिले। बिजनेस लंच आवर हम लोग ड्रॉप करके, रमजान है, रात का काम चालू कर रहे हैं।
These are the burners that remains to be switched off as we speak since this morning. There have not been any official communication to the owners of the hotels and restaurants that there will be scarcity of LPGs. But as the government have said that they are prioritizing the consumption of the domestic LPGs. Henceforth, there is a severe scarcity as far as non-domestic LPGs are concerned.
Now, many of the restaurants are relying on the PNG gas line, but many are still relying on the commercial cylinders. And this is where the real impact is, because remember, the households have been given a priority, but the scarcity is going to hit not just the commercial interest, but also the household cylinders.
To tackle the situation, the central government has taken several steps. Essential Commodities Act invoked. Oil Ministry panel set up to examine supply disruptions. Refineries asked to maximize LPG output. LPG refill booking cycle extended. Petroleum Minister Hardeep Singh Puri also met Prime Minister Modi, with External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar present to review the situation. For now, the squeeze is being felt by most is India's restaurant industry. But the larger question remains, is this a real shortage or a crisis driven by panic and hoarding? Bureau Report, India Today.
So let's raise one big question right at the very outset. As the war comes home with these LPG shortages, what can India really do to in some way de-escalate tensions in West Asia? That's the big question I want to pose to the former National Security Advisor and Foreign Secretary Shiv Shankar Menon, widely regarded as one of India's leading foreign policy voices. Appreciate, Mr. Menon, you're joining us. The Foreign Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, told Parliament that India is committed to de-escalation, to dialogue, to diplomacy, to resolve the West Asia crisis. Do you believe that India has any role at all to play, given the kind of power games going on between Iran and Israel and America?
Well, there's two big limitations on what we can or could do. One is, of course, the fact that this is a war initiated by the US and Israel, who initiated the attack. So unless we can persuade them, that, frankly, I'm not sure how much influence we have at this moment, because we're now talking the psychology of individual leaders who seem committed to this war and to the attack on Iran. The other limiting factor, of course, is that you can only play some kind of mediatory role if both sides accept your bona fides, regard you as relatively neutral, and if both sides want a ceasefire. Now, today, it seems to me that of the three parties, main parties involved, the USA maybe could be satisfied with a quick ending, but we have no idea, frankly, because they keep shifting the goalposts. We've heard different explanations for why they're doing this from the president. Israel and Iran seem to want a much longer conflict because to serve their ends. In Iran's case, to be able to use her advantages, which is to create pain for US allies in the Gulf, drive up oil prices, and generally, therefore, create reverse leverage. And in Israel's case, to remove Iran as a real geopolitical actor. So I think there are limits on what we can do. Just advocating peace, motherhood, apple pie, diplomacy, frankly, to my mind, it sounds good, but I'm not sure how effective it can be.
The reason I'm asking you is, if you look over the last 10 days, Mr. Menon, we stayed silent for at least 5 days after the assassination of Ali Khamenei. We did not directly question the US for the sinking of a ship in the Indian Ocean. And by and large, there's a sense that we've been unwilling, at least publicly, to question Donald Trump's act of aggression, or Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu's act of aggression. Do you believe that our silence has been strategic, or should we have spoken out in some form early on?
I think we've chosen silence actually on all the big issues over the last 5 years. Whether it was our refusal to call a Russian invasion of Ukraine an invasion, whether it was on the slaughter in Gaza, where we abstained on resolutions in the UN. This has been a consistent pattern of behavior. And I think ultimately it diminishes the value of your voice. People stop listening to you if you're silent because they're used to not listening to you. The world goes on about its business. I do believe that, frankly, when a head of a state you recognize in your neighborhood is assassinated illegally, for us to stay silent, not to condemn the act, not even to condole, and 5 days later to send the foreign secretary rather than the prime minister or the foreign minister, I find that inexplicable, quite frankly. But if you choose to step aside, stay silent, then you can't then expect to have a role.
Mm-hmm. But then this is seen as strategic silence. When I speak to people in government, they say, look, this is a fast developing situation. It's very fluid. Therefore, we chose silence was part of deliberate statecraft. How do you respond that India in those early days in the Gulf War staying silent? Now suddenly, as I said, the chickens have come home because LPG prices are being affected. There is a sense that the war is no longer restricted to the theatre of war, but its impact is being felt even here in India. Can silence be viewed as strategic or statecraft?
I don't see this as strategy. When you have direct interests involved, where it's going to affect you immediately. I mean, the rise in oil prices affects you immediately. The absence of fertilizer supplies affects you immediately. You've seen that LPG supplies are being cut across the country. I mean, this has happened immediately. And how is silence strategic in this situation? I find this an impossible argument. By the way, no previous government of India, not even Charan Singh's government, a temporary government, was silent when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. He stood up and said what he thought about it. For me, this is really inexplicable. This is India. And we have our interests, and we should speak for ourselves. It's not strategic to keep your mouth shut, and especially when it creates the impression that you are choosing implicitly the side of the aggressors.
You use the word that the aggression itself is illegal. Now, if we, for example, had spoken out, condemned the aggression, called it illegal, condoled at the assassination of Ali Khamenei, maybe the fear in government was that it would attract a backlash from Donald Trump, someone who simply doesn't conform to the rules of normal political behavior. And we didn't want to get on his wrong side. The Prime Minister had just gone to Israel, met Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you believe, therefore, that there is a sense that we don't want to be on the wrong side, in a way, of Netanyahu and Donald Trump at this moment?
I'm not sure what the wrong side is. When the Deputy Secretary of State stands up in the Raisina dialogue and tells you, we're not going to let you rise, we won't let you do what China did to us. When, as you said, a ship that was participating in your exercises gets torpedoed close to your coast, when you are told by the US administration that we allow you to import, notice the word, to import oil which has already been loaded before March 5th. When Mr. Trump claims that he has prevented a nuclear war in the subcontinent, I think 48 times maybe at last count. I mean, I'm not sure which side you are on today and why you think you are on the right side. I don't see great US consideration for your point of view or even for your sentiments in the last few months, starting with the brutality and the way in which Indians were deported from the US, illegal perhaps, but certainly they were treated brutally, and H-1B visas, and the list is very long. So I'm not sure what equities we are protecting here.
Are you saying we should have therefore called out Donald Trump for what you call an illegal war of aggression on Iran, called out Benjamin Netanyahu, who really seems to be the one driving the war in a way? Would that have given us greater moral stature to then now play a bigger role?
I think I forget about moral stature, but certainly I think the world would treat you with more respect if over the last 5 years you had not kept your mouth shut on every important issue. If this is a strategy, it's a strategy that has failed. But there's a sense that the last thing you...
Yes. Because there is a sense that the last thing you want to do is get into a war of words with someone like Donald Trump. That with Donald Trump, you just keep away the noise that he makes on a daily basis, because that can only further complicate matters. You don't agree with that?
What I'm saying is very simple. If you have nothing to say, don't say anything. But surely India has something to say. You have a view on these issues, express your view. You don't have to get into a war of words. You're not talking to Trump only. You're talking to the world, and you're saying what you think. That's it. I mean, Trump doesn't seem to bother about all this, about not getting into a war of words, nor does anybody else. Every other member of the BRICS has spoken. Most developing countries have spoken and said what they think.
But now the government says, at least listening to Dr. Jaishankar in Parliament, he spoke about the need to respect territorial sovereignty. He spoke about the need to push for peace at the earliest, de-escalation. Do you believe these are all fine words that mean very little because it's too little, too late? That therefore we simply have now no leverage? Will the Iranians in particular trust us, because the foreign minister has been in conversation with the Iranian foreign minister over the last couple of days as well? Do you believe Iran will see us also as an honest player in this conflict?
I'm not privy to the conversations or what happened or what they said, what they did. I can only say that from my point of view, I am not interested in statements. And frankly, we have had contradictory, so many statements being made, so many leaks, so much spin surrounding this war, that for me, the only thing that matters is actions and outcomes. So I will judge each of the powers, whether it's India, whether it's Iran, whether it's the US, Israel, by what they do, rather than by what they say. Secondly, it seems to me that the important thing at the end of it is the outcomes that you arrive at. And today there's no sign of any of these outcomes. Territorial integrity, I mean, you're assassinating leaders. You're breaching their territorial integrity and sovereignty every day and threatening to do more of it. So frankly, I will wait until there's some clarity on outcomes before I pass judgment on all this.
So what do you think India should do now? Now we are 11 days into this war. What is it that India can do? Should it now at least speak out and say, Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, this is an illegal war of aggression against a sovereign country. There are other ways to resolve this. Do you believe that's the way forward, to speak up loudly if we claim to be particularly a leader of the global south?
You know, the moment for the government to speak is over, because I think events have moved on. I hope the government decides to speak out in the future and allows a real debate on these issues, rather than just a unilateral statement in Parliament, because it would convey to the world, including Iran and to the Americans, the breadth of sentiment in this country, which is important. They should know that there are various opinions in India on this. But more important than that, I think we have immediate problems to deal with. Do the practical. Find alternative sources of supply of LNG, for instance. You deal with the energy security problem. Don't assume that the US is going to stop this tomorrow and that everything is going to go back to normal. There's no going back in politics. Politics is a process. And so let's see where we can, we have enough practical things to do, and go out and share it with the people. Tell the people of India where we are, what's happening, what we're doing about it. I think that will reassure people considerably. And I think that's our primary job as a country right now. Long term, whether the world becomes more...
So you're saying...
Yeah, I'm saying that there is enough to...
So you're saying there should be a full parliament? You're saying there should be a full parliament? You're saying there should be a full parliament debate on this? Parliament must debate the West Asia crisis?
There are multiple ways of expressing yourself. Parliament debates are one way, which are actually a very good way. But there are a whole host of ways. People can express their opinions. You can tell people that, follow your conscience, express yourself in articles, go out and give interviews, talk to people. And I think we need a proper discussion. This is an important enough issue that affects our future in every which way. This is our neighborhood and what's happening to it. So it's not something that I think we can just ignore and hide our heads in the sand.
Right. So if I may just for a moment, you see, politicians engage in what I call is whataboutery. A lot of BJP politicians will tell you, what did the Congress do when they were in power? You were also serving in the Manmohan Singh government. Did the government take a firm stand after 26/11? Were we under US pressure not to attack Pakistan? Did we take a stand when Muammar Gaddafi was taken out by the NATO forces? Did we take a stand when America took out a Saddam Hussein? They say it's very well to now speak out when the BJP is observing silent. But what was India's stand in that period between 2004 and 14?
Actually, we made our views known on each of the issues that you've mentioned, sometimes privately, sometimes publicly, sometimes through interviews, sometimes through articles, in various ways. There were debates on all these issues in Parliament. We answered Parliament questions, starred questions on some of these. So, and frankly, whataboutery is no answer. So to misrepresent what happened in the past, I mean, this is a misrepresentation. To say that, India did nothing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a misrepresentation. There was a limit to what we could do because there are limits to our powers. I mean, we can't stop the Americans from attacking Iran, even today. But certainly we let our views be known, and we tried, and we maintained credibility with all sides involved.
What according to you, Mr. Menon, then, is the best case scenario and the worst case scenario from your perspective? As you see, give us the bigger picture as you're watching it unfold at the moment. Do you fear that things will get worse before they get better? And what are the immediate repercussions on India in particular?
Well, the best case, of course, from our point of view, is that fear of $5 a gallon gas at the pump in the US before the midterms makes the US stop very soon. Hormuz reopens, and all those tankers which are stuck on one side or the other manage to get moving, and at least they can. Now, the trouble is it will take time to get the LNG trains working again. But hopefully we can come back to some semblance of normalcy relative. That's the best case. Is it likely? It all depends on, as far as I can see, on the very small little decision-making circles in the US, because this is something that the US and Israel have started. If the US decides to stop, I'm not sure how long Israel can go on. The Iranians might like to carry it on. But, because ultimately their fear is that if it stops, they'll be back where they were last June with the prospect of another attack whenever it suits their opponents. But that does it so more likely than an early stop and all the things I mentioned in the best case, I think is a petering out of it over time. But whether it'll happen in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it's very hard to say, because you've had completely contradictory explanations for why they're doing this from the US. The US is clearly, they've talked of regime change, they've talked of a nuclear program which was supposed to have been obliterated, according to the president last June. Now we're told in 2 weeks Iran was going to have a bomb. The missile program, Iran's behavior in the neighborhood, different explanations. So frankly, that becomes very hard to predict.
What do you see as the biggest fear from an Indian perspective? What is it about this war that we should really be worried about now?
I hope to God that our strategic oil reserve and that we build in resilience into our supply arrangements for gas, for fertilizer, and that we take those kinds of lessons from this war, where even such a short conflict, even if it ends tomorrow, where we have all our pain points, we must make sure that we eliminate those for the future.
Well, would you have advised the Prime Minister to go to Israel on the eve of this war? Do you believe that was the right decision, or hindsight is 2020 and now today it may appear that perhaps that was the wrong time? Do you believe there is a right and wrong time for such diplomatic visits?
I don't know actually why the visit took place. I'm still wondering about, quite apart from the timing, I wasn't sure what occasioned the visit. And I must say the look is not good.
It was to strengthen defense cooperation with Israel. It was to strengthen defense cooperation with Israel. Those were many of the deals signed.
But all that could have been done without a prime ministerial visit. And most of our defense cooperation with Israel is solid, has been for some time. And that doesn't require prime ministerial intervention. So I'm still not sure why the visit took place. And then I presume they had some reason to do it when they did. But nobody has, frankly, I'm not familiar with that. But for me, the look wasn't good, as you said, and especially with hindsight.
Sir, the fact is we have about 10 million citizens who live across the Gulf. We have a number of Indian students in Iran. We've built strong relationships with the United Arab Emirates in particular. We've built decent relationship with Saudi Arabia, strong relations now with Israel. And we've had an enduring relationship with Iran, even if we've not agreed with them on every issue, for example, Iran's views on Kashmir. But broadly, do you believe it's possible to be neutral at all in this hyper-polarized Trump world with so many actors being influenced?
It's not a question of being neutral. You've never been neutral on Middle Eastern issues. You've been right. And you've expressed your interest. And that despite, and because of that, because they knew what you were doing, you have maintained decent relationships from the 50s with all the major actors in the Middle East, all the regional powers. Whether it was Egypt, whether it was Saudi Arabia, you had the King of Saudi Arabia coming here in 1956. Whether it was Iran, whether it was Turkey, to a lesser extent perhaps, whether it was Israel. You worked with Israel right through. In 74, you faced an oil boycott from Saudi because of your relations with Israel, long before you had an embassy, but you were still dealing with them. So it was possible because they respected the fact that you had your interests and your views, and you expressed them diplomatically in ways which they understood. And I think it's possible, but that doesn't mean you have to be new.
Mr. Shiv Shankar Menon, you've given us an overview of where you believe the war could be heading, but more importantly, you've told us what India's stand should be. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajdeep. Thank you very much. All the best.
Okay, let's turn to the top 5 developments from that raging war in West Asia at the moment. With Tehran refusing to surrender or back down, the United States has warned Iran that today will be the most intense day of strikes. President Donald Trump threatened to hit Iran 20 times harder if they blocked oil from passing through the Strait of Hormuz, boasting of sending Iranian Navy to the bottom of the ocean. Iran, meanwhile, has ruled out heading back to the negotiation table with the United States, saying talks with Washington won't be on their agenda anymore. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi warning that strikes will continue for as long as necessary. Donald Trump says he's not happy with Mujtaba Khamenei being chosen as Iran's new supreme leader, called it a mistake. Tehran says no outside power has rights to interfere in Iran's domestic affairs. The Middle East's largest oil refinery in UAE's Ruwas has been shut temporarily after it caught fire following a drone attack by Iran. The Abu Dhabi media office says no injuries have been reported so far. The Israeli military carried out another series of strikes in Beirut's southern suburbs, targeting infrastructure linked to Hezbollah. Close to 500 people have been killed in Israeli attacks on Lebanon in the ongoing war. America has asked its citizens to evacuate. Now, it's been 10 days since that missile strike struck a school in Iran's Minab area, killing 165 schoolgirls, the deadliest casualties of the war so far. Since then, Trump's heart has bled for the Iranian women's soccer team in Australia, but the US president continues to dodge responsibility and accountability for the death of these schoolgirls, even claiming that it wasn't an American missile. Well, India Today's OSIN team today comprehensively demolishes Trump's claims on and his attempts to evade accountability. Here's a report.
As the US-Israel combined war with Tehran enters day 11, the use of Tomahawk cruise missiles on an elementary girls' school in Minab, killing at least 165 people, mostly children, have raised humanitarian questions. Following the deadly attack on the girls' school on February 28, the Trump administration has not taken responsibility of the attack, saying the probe is on. Trump went a step further, saying Iran was behind the bombing on school.
Did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 170?
No, in my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Nixon? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly investigating.
Still investigating.
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
But a new video of the attack has emerged showing evidence that a US Tomahawk missile likely hit an Iranian school. The chilling video, uploaded by Iran's Mehr news agency and verified by the New York Times, shows a missile striking a naval base near the Shajara Tayyab school in Minab on February 28.
The distinct property that we are looking for is this missing piece. Remember, this is an Iranian missile. This is a Tomahawk cruise missile. You see, in the Iranian missile, there is a distinct separate engine mounted at the bottom. In the Tomahawk cruise missile, there is a very small air inlet hole, but it is not visible from that distance.
But when President Trump was again asked about the use of tomahawks by the US on the school, he squarely blamed Iran and said the country had access to US-made Tomahawk cruise missiles. He said the strike could have come from Iran or any other country, arguing that the Tomahawk is widely available.
Tomahawk missile likely destroyed that Iranian girls' school. So will the U.S. accept any responsibility?
Well, I
for
haven't
that strike?
seen it, and I will say that the Tomahawk, which is one of the most powerful weapons around, is used by, is sold and used by other countries, you know that. And whether it's Iran, who also has some Tomahawks, I wish they had more, but whether it's Iran or somebody else, the fact that a Tomahawk is very generic, it's sold to other countries.
Now, if you merge this satellite picture with the video, you get this particular pattern. What we believe is that at least 3 sets of projectiles, likely a cruise missile, hit all these buildings. The reason why we are saying a cruise missile is because of the pattern of destruction. The pattern of damage is very much similar.
And the evidence of an American hand into the deadly attack continues to just pile up.
Now, the clinching evidence is this picture, which was released later last night, again by Iranian media agencies. Now, if you zoom in this particular picture, these are the remnants of the munition, the missile which was recovered from the school compound. It reads Globe Motors, 2275 Stanley Avenue, Dayton, Ohio. It's a company registered. We have checked. You can do a Google search. You will find its address. It's a US-based company.
We continue to raise the alarm over the humanitarian impact of escalating violence across parts of the Middle East, which is driving rising civilian casualties, damage to civilian infrastructure, and growing displacement of people.
At a time when Trump has been pressurizing the Australian Prime Minister to give asylum to the Iranian women's soccer team, his complete refusal to shoulder responsibility for the deaths of 150 Iranian schoolgirls exposes the double standards in the dichotomy of war. Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
So as the death toll mounts, the casualties mount and the bombings continue, the big question, is there an end game to the war in West Asia? Joining me now is a special guest, Trita Parsi. Is an Iranian-born Swedish writer and political analyst. He's Executive Vice President at the Quincy Institute. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Parsi. It's very interesting. You've tweeted today after the Donald Trump presser suggesting that there were 2 key objectives the American president had: calm the markets and prepare the ground for ending the war through a unilateral declaration of victory. But the Secretary of Defense, Mr. Hegseth, seems to suggest that the bombings will only intensify on Iran. So do you see this conflict ending soon?
No, I don't think the conflict will be ending soon. And I think what Trump was trying to do was to essentially calm the markets, because he's very sensitive to the global markets, particularly oil prices. It has a profound impact on global inflation and US inflation, which has a direct political consequence in the US, while at the same time trying to intensify the war so that he can declare a victory before his own base turns against his war. However, even if he declares victory, even if he were to withdraw militarily from the region, it does not mean that the Iranians are going to end the war. The Iranians are likely going to continue the war until they believe that they have reached a point in which the United States and Israel are not likely to restart the war because the cost has been too high on them, as well as getting some sort of a sanctions relief that enables Iran not to be in a state of continuous weakening after the war has ended. Because if it ends right now, Iran will be in a state of continuous weakening because of the lack of sanctions relief. And that continuous weakening will prompt Israel and the United States to attack Iran again, because it's precisely the perception of Iranian weakness that gave the US and Israel the idea that there was an opportunity to strike.
So 2 things come from what you've said. A, you're saying the war is unlikely to end soon. B, you seem to suggest that it's unlikely that Iran will see the kind of regime change that Israel, if not the US, wants. Am I broadly correct?
Yes, I mean, right now we don't see any signs of that at all. The theory behind this was that the US would be taking out a lot of the state's repressive capabilities, IRGC, Basij, and that people would rise up. We're not seeing any signs of that. If anything, we're starting to see increasing signs of nationalism and rallying around the flag, particularly after Trump talks about arming separatist Kurds, after he's attacking the Iranian nation by saying that all Iranians are horrible people. It is no longer focused on the regime, as well as the fact that you have these attacks against desalination plants, oil refineries, power plants that are not an attack on the state's repressive capabilities, but is an attack on Iran as a whole. Trump even said that he thinks that Iran's map may not look the same way after this war. This is fueling nationalism and the belief that Trump is seeking the dismemberment of Iran.
And we've run a story today about the schools and the manner in which the school bombing has also evoked a strong sense of anger in Iran. You believe the longer this war continues, if anything, Iranian nationalism will be spurred even more. Am I correct?
I believe so, because we've already seen that the United States has lost control over the war, and it is only trying to inflict as much destruction as possible rather than actually inflicting damage in areas that are strategic. Instead, it's just going for all-out suffering. It thinks that the sound of explosions will cover up the fact that the US no longer has a strategy.
But what about Iran? Does Iran really have a strategy when Iran targets Gulf states, continues to pound missiles in many places around Iran? Do you believe Iran also has a strategy? If US has gone into this war without a strategy, does Iran have a strategy?
The US did not go in without a strategy. It had a plan A, and the plan A was that Iran would collapse within 4 days. That plan A has crashed down, and it doesn't have a replacement. The Iranians had a strategy from the outset, and they're sticking to it, which is they are doing everything they can to increase the cost of this war, not just on the US, but on everyone. These attacks against the GCC states are aimed at striking US bases, US personnel, but also the global economy. The strikes against the Strait of Hormuz is about choking the global economy and making sure that the inflation goes up and that the cost simply becomes too high for everyone. The Iranians are looking for the most accessible pain point. It is not the Israeli casualties. Israeli casualty tolerance is much too high. It's not even American casualties. It is the global economy. And that strategy that you pointed out is very well thought through, maybe completely immoral. And it is also, it should be said that many of these states in the GCC had worked very hard to prevent this war. They're still getting bombed. But this is a strategy that the Iranians have chosen because they are clearly in a weaker position. So they have to go towards the weakest pain point that they can identify.
Does Israel have a clear strategy, or is Israel still under Netanyahu hell-bent on dismantling the Iranian state?
Well, that is the Israeli strategy. I think the Israelis are the biggest winners so far. The Israelis are very content. It doesn't matter to the Israelis if the next supreme leader is named Moshtaba, Hassan, or Ali. That's of no particular importance to them. What's important to them is that as much as possible of Iran's military and state capability and economic capability is destroyed. They want to make sure that Iran is set back 10, 15, perhaps 20 years, so that the balance of power in the region shifts in Israel's direction. And so that even though Iran will continue to have missile capabilities and will continue to be able to strike and deter Israel to a certain extent, it will nevertheless be set back so far that the Israelis won't have to think about doing this again for another 10 to 15 years. That is absolutely being achieved. It's America's objectives that are not being achieved.
But then what is the end game, and who decides the end game? You seem to suggest that Donald Trump could unilaterally one day wake up and declare victory. Do you believe Trump will end this war? Who ends this war? What is the end game?
This is the fallacy that Trump has fallen under, to believe that he can just unilaterally decide when this war ends. I think he would like to end it at some point in which he just declares victory, even if many of his objectives have not been achieved. But again, as I said earlier on, the Iranians have a vote in this as well, and so do the Israelis. even if the Iranians and the Americans were to come to an agreement on some form of an end to this war, that I think would have to contain some sort of a sanctions relief for the Iranians as well. They won't accept it otherwise. That does not mean that the Israelis stop. The Israelis still have the ability to sabotage any type of an agreement between the US and Iran until Trump decides that he is willing to tell the Israelis no. So far, he has not. He's just gone along with what the Israelis have wanted, and he is in a terrible situation as a result.
But, you've got a Donald Trump, therefore, who, publicly says it's more fun to sink ships. Here is someone completely, if I maybe use the word amoral, some of his comments, frankly, from an Indian perspective, grotesque in the way there is absolutely no compassion, empathy. So Trump is not going to change. Given all that, where do we stand, Mr. Parsi, particularly, let's say, a month from now? If I'm interviewing you again, do you believe the war will still be raging?
I think there's a high chance and risk that the war will continue for another month. There's also a likelihood that because of economic pressure and because of pressure from other countries onto the United States to end this war, because the fact that many other countries, India, will pay a higher economic price much sooner than the US will. As I understand, some Indian schools are already being closed as a result of fuel shortages, etc. Unless that pressure from other countries who are paying the price for this, the Philippines, Bangladesh, and others, starts to actually channel towards Trump, then this can go on for a month. But if that pressure starts to mount and other countries are stepping in and pressuring all sides, the Iranians as well, to end this war, then we will see this war continue for quite some time. Other countries have a vote in this. It doesn't seem that many of them have realized or are willing to...
Sure.
Go ahead.
My final question, therefore, to you, Mr. Parsi, what is your biggest takeaway from the last 11 days? What is it that has perhaps surprised you most in the last 11 days, and what worries you the most?
I'm not surprised that we are in this situation. I am surprised that the Iranians escalated vis-a-vis the GCC states so quickly. But I'm not surprised that we're in this situation. I wrote before all of this that this is all based on a massive miscalculation sold to the Trump administration by the Israelis, saying that Iran is so weak, it has no choice but to surrender. That is absolutely not the case, and as we see the result of that right now. My biggest worry is that this goes on for weeks and months, and that it will not only destroy much of the Iranian state, but much of the global economy, and we will see massive refugee flows out of Iran. If just 10% of the Iranian population flee, similar to what we saw in Syria, we're talking about 9 million people, most of them going towards Europe.
Okay. Let's leave it there, Trita Parsi. I appreciate you joining us and doing some plain speaking on where the war stands as we speak. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
A war seemingly without a strategy. Our continuing coverage, of course, with stellar guests from India and across the world. Okay, let's leave you tonight with a happy, feel-good image of the day, because the country's ambitious Cheetah relocation program has crossed a significant milestone. The country has now more than 50 cheetahs. The boost came after Jwala, a Namibian cheetah and one of the key mothers under the program, gave birth to 5 cubs at the Kuno National Park. From extinction to a thriving wilderness, India's cheetah comeback is more than a conservation win. It's a sprint of life, a testament to resilience and the roar of nature heard once again. Much that indeed the government, which was criticized initially, can claim, hey, we didn't get it so wrong after all. The cheetahs are there in Kuno in large numbers. That's our image of the day. Thanks for watching. You stay well. Good night. Shubh Ratri. Jai Hind. Namaskar.